Yeah, good evening. How you doing? This is Getting the Record Straight. Getting the Record Straight. This is Rob Bell. Rob I. Bell. How's everybody doing? It's Monday. We're in the midst of this coronavirus, so please be careful. Please watch what you're doing. Please stay away from a whole bunch of people and do the right thing. Um, Also, in the midst of the Democratic primary election, and one of the reasons why I said my opening edition of Getting the Record Straight was I was talking about why I was doing this, why I was doing these videos or podcasts. And I don't even think I got a chance to really expound on that, but part of it is what I just call, in a very broad sense, the madness. What's been going on at least the last 20 years with this country is nothing short of insanity and madness. Constant wars, spending so much money on the military, it's absolutely senseless. You can't even begin to explain it, and yet it's we take it as something that's just normal. We've normalized killing and war and torture, everything, just like it's absolutely nothing. And so it kind of this is rolled over now into this election where no one's even really talking about it. How much money we spend on war, how much money we spend on the so-called military-industrial complex, and yet it keeps us from really doing many of the things which we desperately need to do here in this country. So, to some degree, um, just talking about this election is a bit of a sham. Uh, and Really, at some point, we're going to really have to begin to talk about ourselves, black people, white people, Americans, what we are. Joe Biden, the presumptive favorite to be the Democratic nominee, likes to talk about the soul of America. And the question really at some point is going to be, what soul? We're right now participating in the largest humanitarian crisis in the world in Yemen. Nobody cares about that. So here we are. And it's really been really amazing talking about this primary. And we are talking about the primary. The general election has not started. We all want to see Donald Trump out. I personally would like to see him in jail. But then again, there's other people I would have liked to have seen in jail too. I mean, there's no way, I think, in this world that George Bush and Dick Cheney and a whole bunch of other people who were in that administration and who aren't in jail and they're just as criminally minded as Satan himself. Um, that said, it's really kind of humorous to see how upset people are in the primary, and I get them on Facebook quite a bit, where it should be our duty to vet the candidates and criticize them, and particularly when they're telling bald-faced lies, and we bring that out. And just some of the responses I've gotten on Facebook are outrageous. Like I'm not supposed to criticize. Like my critiquing and bringing to light Joe Biden in particular, his shortcomings, like that's some kind of secret. Like Donald Trump isn't going to do that. He's going to give him a pass. He's not going to talk about him lying about getting arrested going to see Nelson Mandela. Just amazing kind of lies. But you know what? Before I get into Joe Biden, I really want to just talk briefly about what happened in South Carolina, a bastion of freedom and democracy there, and where they, probably they have a very high degree of statues of and memorials of people who, gave their life for racism and slavery and what have you. But anyway, particularly Clyburn, James Clyburn, who's now, held up as a black leader. And, I don't know who obviously represents black people in South Carolina. Beyond that, I haven't a clue. But, South Carolina, it's where the only black, United States senator is from, who happens, of course, to be a Republican. And, it's a conservative state. And I don't know what Clyburn has done to earn this moniker as being, a black leader, other than being in Congress and being from South Carolina. But he's turned the state for Biden, and on top of that, he's calling for the primaries be cut short and for them to end, and we all rally around Joe Biden. I'm not with that, and furthermore, I don't. I think we really need to take a hard look at Clyburn and what he represents, and really what Glenn Ford at Black Agenda Report often calls the black misleadership class. And I don't know if I want to go that far, but, again, what we've normalized and what we accept as leadership, and I'm going to go into this more, I think, the next time I do this segment of Getting the Record Straight, where I really want to go into in depth what black leadership, and particularly the Congressional Black Caucus, has been all about. Because quite frankly, the past quarter century, 25 years or so, I can't even think of much of what they've done. They provided very little in terms of leadership, very little in terms of vision and, planning and, again, leadership, being able to direct and serve as a buttress against, the right wing. And, the country has moved so far to the right that we now have a democratic right wing. It's not a democratic, what do they call it, establishment per se. It's the right wing. And getting back to Clyburn, Tim Scott, by the way, is the name of the senator who serves in the United States Senate from South Carolina. Very, very conservative, right wing. One could even call him neo-fascist as far as I'm concerned. But Brother Clyburn, the only thing I remember about him in terms of, some national exposure was a few years ago, right before the Charleston shooting. Not long before that, there was a big thing going on in Charleston, trying to move the Confederate statue off of the Capitol grounds. And I remember them interviewing Clyburn, and it was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen. They were talking to one of the news reporters was talking to him about it was a whole demonstration about moving this racist statue, this memorial to racist killers, off of the Capitol grounds and putting it at least on I think maybe some kind of private territory or land or something. And when they interviewed Clyburn, he was like, I don't think we should mess with that because these people in South Carolina, you just don't know how tough and how rigid they can be. I mean, it could start a war down here. It was just, that was supposed to be leadership. Now, to his credit, I do remember after that, sometime after that, he may have put a bill together, or probably a bill where federal dollars were not to be paid to institutions, locales, that kind of thing that had Confederate statues or not memorabilia, but some kind of Confederate statue. And of course, somebody from Obama's administration was like, "Oh no, there's other ways to do that." And I think Clyburn's particular concern had to do with a university down there in South Carolina that I think it was the Citadel, and they didn't want that any federal money to be used because they had, they had Confederate statues, memorials, if you will, on the campus, and he didn't want any money being used to support that. Anyway, so I'll give him credit for that, but he really showed his colors, if you will, when he showed this real lack of courage regarding the removal of the memorial from the Capitol. And beyond that, I can't really think of much else that would, constitute some kind of, leadership. I mean, I know he worked with Obama on a number of different issues, but in terms of something that, is bold, not that much. And I think when you look at the Congressional Black Caucus, it is really hard to put your finger on much in terms of development for, the broader black community and what's going on. And like I said, I'd probably like to do some more in-depth discussion of that. But, I'm not buying, and I don't think anyone should, this idea that, we should end the election, the primary now. We should continue to vet and look at the records. And I really don't think there's anything more indicative of how someone will govern, and in fact, whether they can win, than their record. I mean, if you think that Donald Trump, lowlife that he is just going to give Joe Biden a pass on his record, you really, I don't know what you're drinking or smoking, but Bernie Sanders is giving him a pass, but Donald Trump isn't, and that goes for his kids and everything else. They're all going to be on the table, and they're all suspect, and that's the problem, So with that in mind, if you want to vote. I mean, not if you're going to vote, but definitely vote. Whoever the Democratic nominee is, I'm going to vote for him. After that, though, I'm really thinking about maybe moving on in terms of the party, because I really think this Democratic thing, I've had enough of it. With that in mind, peace out, and I'll be talking to you soon.